World War I was not simply a war that began because one man was assassinated. The assassination mattered, but it became catastrophic because Europe in 1914 was already packed with tension. Great empires were competing for power, colonies, resources, and prestige. Military leaders believed that fast mobilization could decide a war before the enemy was ready. Politicians feared looking weak in front of rivals. Alliances were meant to prevent conflict, but they also meant that a local crisis could quickly pull in several major powers. When the First World War began, many expected a short, dramatic struggle. Instead, it became one of history's deadliest conflicts and destroyed the political world that had existed before it. The deeper causes had been forming for decades. Germany's rise after unification changed the balance of power in Europe. It became an industrial and military giant, making older powers nervous. Britain still dominated the seas and wanted to protect its global position. France feared German strength and remembered its earlier defeat by Prussia. Russia wanted influence in the Balkans and saw itself as a protector of Slavic peoples. Austria-Hungary, meanwhile, was a multi-ethnic empire struggling with nationalist movements. The Ottoman Empire was weakening, creating further competition over its lands and influence. Europe's leaders built armies, expanded fleets, and made war plans, believing preparation would keep them safe. Instead, preparation made every crisis more dangerous. The Balkans were especially unstable. This region sat at the edge of Austria-Hungary, Russia's ambitions, and the declining Ottoman world. Nationalist groups wanted independence or unity with neighboring peoples, while empires wanted control and stability. Serbia had become a focus of South Slavic nationalism, which Austria-Hungary saw as a threat to its own survival. If Serbian nationalism spread, it could encourage other groups inside the empire to demand independence. This made Austria-Hungary determined to act firmly when challenged. Russia, however, could not easily abandon Serbia without losing influence and prestige. So the Balkans became more than a local trouble spot. They became the place where imperial fear, nationalism, and alliance politics collided. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb nationalist. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia and decided to use the crisis to weaken it. But punishing Serbia risked provoking Russia. Germany gave Austria-Hungary support, believing firm action was necessary and perhaps assuming the conflict could be contained. Serbia resisted parts of Austria-Hungary's demands. On July 28, Austria-Hungary declared war. Russia mobilized in Serbia's defense. Germany then declared war on Russia and France. What began as a confrontation between Austria-Hungary and Serbia rapidly became a continental war because each move triggered the next. The crisis became a chain reaction. Germany's strategy depended on defeating France quickly before turning against Russia. To reach France from the north, German forces invaded Belgium, a neutral country. That decision brought Britain into the war. Britain had strategic reasons to prevent Germany from dominating the continent, and Belgium's neutrality gave the intervention a clear cause. The early German advance was powerful, but it did not deliver the quick victory leaders expected. In September 1914, the advance was halted before Paris. Both sides tried to maneuver around each other, but the movement gradually ended. Soldiers dug trenches for protection. By the end of 1914, the Western Front stretched from the English Channel to Switzerland, locking millions into a brutal stalemate. Trench warfare became the symbol of the war because it revealed the central problem of modern combat. Defensive weapons had become devastatingly effective. Machine guns could stop infantry assaults. Artillery could destroy positions from far away. Barbed wire slowed attackers in open ground. Soldiers who climbed out of trenches had to cross no man's land under fire, often after bombardments had already turned the landscape into mud and craters. Commanders still tried to break through with massive offensives, but even when attackers captured ground, they often lacked the speed and communication needed to exploit it. The result was attrition, a strategy of wearing down the enemy through losses, exhaustion, and pressure rather than rapid victory. The great battles of the Western Front showed how costly this stalemate became. Verdun was designed as a battle of endurance, a place where Germany hoped to bleed France until it could no longer continue. Instead, both sides suffered enormously and Verdun became a symbol of French determination. The Somme, launched by the Allies in 1916, was meant to relieve pressure and break German lines, but it produced massive casualties for limited gains. Passchendaele later became infamous for mud, shell holes, and conditions so terrible that movement itself became a challenge. These battles were not meaningless, but they showed the terrible gap between industrial firepower and the tactics used to overcome it. World War I accelerated military technology in ways that changed warfare permanently. Artillery became the dominant killer on the battlefield. Machine guns made old-style infantry charges extremely dangerous. Chemical weapons introduced fear that could not be seen until it was too late, forcing soldiers to rely on gas masks and constant alertness. Aircraft began as reconnaissance tools, helping armies see enemy movements, then developed into fighters and bombers. Tanks were introduced to cross trenches and crush barbed wire, though early models were slow and unreliable. Submarines also became central at sea, especially German U-boats attacking shipping. Technology did not end the stalemate immediately, but it made war more industrial, more mechanical, and more destructive. Although the Western Front dominates popular memory, the war was global. On the Eastern Front, Germany and Austria-Hungary fought Russia across vast distances, with more movement than in the West but still enormous casualties. The Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers, extending the conflict into the Middle East. Fighting touched Africa and the Asia-Pacific because European empires brought their colonies and overseas possessions into the struggle. Italy entered against Austria-Hungary in 1915, hoping to gain territory. Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, and others joined later, each pursuing its own interests. This global scale mattered because the war was not only about European borders. It was about empires, supply routes, colonies, resources, and the future shape of power. The war also transformed civilian life. Governments mobilized entire economies to feed armies, produce shells, build weapons, and control information. Civilians faced shortages, propaganda, grief, and, in occupied regions, direct violence. The movement of soldiers, prisoners, workers, and refugees helped create conditions in which disease could spread. Near the end of the war, the Spanish flu pandemic moved through populations already weakened and disrupted by years of conflict. The war also included genocide, most notably against Armenian communities in the Ottoman Empire. These facts make World War I more than a military story. It was a total crisis that reached into factories, farms, hospitals, families, and entire societies. In 1917, the direction of the war changed. Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare, attacking shipping in the Atlantic in the hope of cutting Britain's lifelines. This helped bring the United States into the war on the Allied side. American forces took time to arrive in large numbers, but the psychological and material effect was significant. The Allies now had access to fresh manpower and resources. In the same year, Russia was shaken by revolution. The Bolsheviks seized power and sought to leave the war. Russia signed an armistice with the Central Powers in December and made peace in March 1918. Germany could now move forces west, but the clock was against it. Germany's last chance came in spring 1918. With Russia out of the war, German commanders launched a major offensive on the Western Front before American strength became overwhelming. At first, the attack gained ground and seemed to break the long deadlock. But the advance exhausted Germany's best troops, stretched supply lines, and failed to deliver a decisive victory. Then the Allies counterattacked. Beginning in August 1918, the 100 Days Offensive pushed German forces back repeatedly. Germany's allies began to collapse as well. Bulgaria signed an armistice after the Vardar offensive. The Ottoman Empire and Austria-Hungary followed. Germany was left isolated, with its army weakening and its home front under revolutionary pressure. On November 9, 1918, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated. 2 days later, on November 11, the armistice ended the fighting. But the peace did not restore the old world. The Russian, German, Austro-Hungarian, and Ottoman empires were shattered or dissolved. New states appeared, including Poland, Finland, the Baltic states, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. The Treaty of Versailles forced Germany to accept territorial losses, disarmament, and reparations, creating deep resentment. The League of Nations was created to prevent another major war, but it lacked the power to manage the instability that followed. World War I killed millions and redrew maps, but its unresolved tensions did not disappear. They helped shape the path toward World War II. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.